At this point, corruption in India's bureaucracy is such a deeply entrenched problem that even routine news now just reads like satire. A small town clock tower stops working a day after inauguration and raises eyebrows about its 40 lakh rupees bill. A low ranking transport constable amasses a secret empire worth hundreds of crores, including a luxury villa abroad. These cases, just from the past 30 days, shine a light on how deep graft runs in the Babu Dam, from junior staff to elite IAS officers. My goal with this video is to speculate on what makes these people behave like this and whether these problems are behavioral, systemic, or a mixture of both. Despite waves of reforms and digital governance initiatives, corruption remains startlingly persistent, and one just can't help but wonder if dismantling the Babu Dam and building that from scratch might be the only way forward. Alright, so a controversial clock tower built under the Smart City project in Bihar Sharif, completed with clearly shoddy workmanship. This 40 lakh rupee structure's clock stopped working within a day, sparking accusations of corruption and misuse of funds. For many, this has become a physical symbol of graft in local governance. And what you may not know is that this structure was made operational for the chief minister's visit. I love how this person comments that the finishing clearly clock fit करने के लिए दीवार में क्या गजब की नक्काशी की गई है. I do think this tweet also sums it up really well, where this guy says this was built by the British in 1880s, and then this was built by Babu's clown emoji. In 2025. Stung by this ridicule, apparently the Bihar Sharif Smart City authorities went into damage control. They first of all denied that the 40 lakh had been spent. They said that the project was still incomplete and the actual cost would be around 20 lakh, insinuating that the higher figure was just a rumor. Officials acknowledged that there was just theft and promised the clock would be fixed and formally inaugurated only after completion. Well, whether the tower cost 20 lakhs or 40 lakhs, it vividly illustrated how allocated funds don't translate into equivalent value on the ground, feeding perceptions that probably most of that money was just pocketed by those involved. Next up, one of the most jaw-dropping corruption sagas of late 2024 centered on Saurabh Sharma, a former constable in the Madhya Pradesh Transport Departments. By rights, he was just a low-level RTO employee, and by low level, I'm not referring to his status or class, I'm just referring to the overall structure, referring to the hierarchy of his position. Investigators say he accumulated assets worth 500 to 700 crores. One of the most jaw-dropping corruption sagas of late 2024 centered on Saurabh Sharma, a former constable in the Madhya Pradesh Transport Department. He was a low-level RTO employee. Yet, he allegedly converted his position into a literal gold mine. Investigators said he amassed assets worth 500 to 700 crores during his tenure. Among the spoils linked to him are also a palatial villa in Dubai, valued at around 150 crore rupees. Apparently, his riches were raked in using a cleverly designed bribery network, as Sharma was entrusted to supervise dozens of transport checkposts where commercial vehicles pay fines and fees. According to officials, he systematically extorted money from truckers and drivers at these checkpoints and then distributed the collections among a circle of collaborators. Basically an illicit toll collection system, which scarily thrived in plain sight. By late 2023, as scrutiny mounted, he took voluntary retirement and vanished, allegedly leaving India to evade arrest. A tip-off in December 2024 led to the seizure of an SUV at a farmhouse, yielding 54 kilograms of gold and 11 crore in cash stashed in bags. In one underground locker, authorities found 201 kilograms silver bars. What's interesting is that he remains on the run while facing criminal charges for money laundering, bribing, and possessing assets grossly disproportionate to his income. And then finally, grand corruption apparently isn't just limited to junior officials. Some of it reaches the very heights of civil service. A recent case in Bihar exposed how senior IAS officers can orchestrate elaborate graft networks. As part of a corruption probe into Sanjeev Hans, a high-ranking IAS officer, they uncovered over 12 crores in cash from premises of 7 senior Bihar government officials in Patna, and others that were caught in this net included a chief engineer in the state's construction department, a joint secretary in the finance department, and multiple project directors and engineers across public work agencies. During 2018 to 23, as chairman of a state power company, he oversaw massive tenders and is accused of handing out projects worth 3,300 crores in return for kickbacks. The ED's report also described how Hans had cultivated relationships with powerful politicians. To me, what's interesting about this case is that not only individual greed, but it shows how entire institutions can just be completely compromised, with multiple officials at multiple levels all colluding together to siphon public funds. So, why do officials engage in corruption? And is this something that's only specific to India? Turns out that the causes are complex and interlocking, and we'll be going through them one by one. First, political pressure and election funding. Politics and bureaucracy in India are incredibly interwoven. In 2019, an estimated 50,000 crores was spent in the general elections, and by 2024, that figure ballooned to around 1 lakh crore rupees. Such astronomical campaign costs foster a quid pro quo culture. Businesses and contractors pay bribes or make donations to ruling parties and bureaucrats in exchange for lucrative contracts or policy favors. A former cabinet secretary bluntly noted that wherever parties are in power, they seek to gain financial resources, and those providing the cash expect contracts or benefits in return. Second, the transfer industry and patronage networks. Within the bureaucracy, the posting and transfer system itself has turned into a transactional racket in many places. What I mean by that is a Karnataka investigation found officials paying 5 to 25 lakhs to secure plum posts, with the open understanding that they would just recover it later. Guess how? Yes, it is by getting bribes from the general public. In other words, a corrupt officer literally invests in a posting and then treats the department as a personal profit center. Anyone who paid for a position will certainly indulge in heavy corruption to make multiples of that sum back, because now you're just looking for a return on investment. And the result is just a self-perpetuating cycle of graft. One upright IAS officer, Ashok Khemka, was transferred a staggering 46 times in 22 years for exposing high-profile land scams, which unfortunately just proves to be a cautionary tale to any civil servant who might want to start voicing their opinions against these practices. Third, red tape and rent-seeking opportunities. The way India's regulatory landscape is constructed, though it has much improved since the days of the license Raj, still gives bureaucrats considerable discretionary power over citizens and businesses. The more complex the rules, the more opportunity for making money based off of those rules and random regulations. As the economy has expanded, big-ticket projects, highways, power plants, urban development schemes have multiplied. And each project needs permits, clearances, and compliance certificates, which can be deliberately slowed down unless somebody greases your palms. In the example of IAS officer Hans that we just went over, his role in a power sector PSU allowed him to award huge contracts in exchange for illicit payments. This is what happens when you have bureaucratic red tape which is not paired with strong transparency. It basically becomes an auction block for corruption, because then it just becomes a name your price, and if somebody can name a higher price, next year it's a higher price, and the cycle continues. Number 4, consumerism, pay disparities, and just societal norms. We have seen material aspirations skyrocket in India over the past few years. Simply put, greed and lifestyle ambitions can drive officials to supplement their income under the table. Culturally, I think we just kind of accept bribes as a way of chai pani. It's just a practical tool to get things done. We don't really bat an eyelid when it comes to that. And Transparency International surveys have found that over 50% of Indians have paid a bribe at some point to obtain a public service. A good example of this is when I lived in Kolkata, India, and I was pulled over for going into a no entry zone. My options were the following. Either I submit my driver's license and go to court 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later to fight my case and probably risk losing my driver's license forever, or I pay the person 500 rupees at the time, for which he would just let me go. I don't want to go on the record to say what I did, but if those are the options that you're faced, it's just not a good look. But we almost look at this type of jugaad as like a cool thing, and we don't really ostracize these people at all. I'm not entirely sure what I'm trying to get at here, but yeah, I think my overall feel is just that as a society, as a culture, we are just kind of okay with it, which I do think plays a huge part in this sort of thing being perpetual. Now, on the other side of that, yeah, you cannot just randomly be like, no, I will not pay the fine, because we saw what happens when you do that. So yeah, I mean, you're between a rock and a hard place here. I'm not sure the best alternative here. I'm just trying to do a little bit of a root cause analysis and share with you what I found. The last thing I want to mention is weak oversight and delayed justice. While India has numerous anti-corruption bodies, from internal vigilance units to state lokayuktas to the Central Vigilance Commission and Central Bureau of Investigation, the accountability system still struggles to consistently deter corrupt behavior. What this means is that the bureaucrats calculate that the chances of them getting caught are just really slim, especially if they have political patrons, which most of the time they do. Even when caught, they just secure bail and continue living their lavish lifestyles while they continue to fight their case for years ongoing in court. Whistleblower protections are weak and informants often face harassment. All of this fosters a sense of impunity. The honest may suffer, but the corrupt will just be fine. I thought this was interesting, where this person said that when a corrupt RTO constable makes 700 crores through corruption, imagine what it's like for those higher up. So what's the solution to all of this, and where have our digital governance reforms led us? Government services from passport applications to tax returns have moved online, diminishing petty bribery in many citizen interfaces. Direct benefit transfer programs now send welfare payments straight to bank accounts, cutting out layers of middlemen who historically siphoned off funds. In fact, the public distribution system for food rations has been cleaned up significantly by using biometric verification, which is just the Aadhaar, to make sure that the ration reaches the right. These digital efforts have indeed reduced corruption in many daily areas. However, technology is not a silver bullet, and as I said that, my light went out, so that's fun. The cases we discussed show how corruption just simply adapts. The Bihar Clock Tower was part of a smart city project, presumably subject to modern monitoring, yet that didn't prevent either poor quality work or apparent fund misappropriation. Officials can still collude to rig e-tenders by leaking information, override digital systems with manual interventions, or fabricate invoices in otherwise computerized processes. Where we're at currently is despite all of the technology, corruption just has found new ways to perpetuate, and India's babus have been very clever to make sure that even initiatives such as faceless bureaucracy can still be turned around and used for their own benefit. In conclusion, I think just the troubling reality of it right now in 2025 is that misuse of powers by babus is not an exception, but just an entrenched way of working. So are we just doomed? No, I wouldn't say reform is impossible. I do think of late, all of the outcry on social media makes a huge difference when it comes to these type of things. More and more Indians every day are waking up to realize that, yeah, even though this is how we've been for the longest time, that doesn't mean that is how we have to be going forward. And also importantly, not all babus are corrupt. India still has countless officers who resist the pressure and do the right thing. And we have to incentivize more of these people to not only exist, but also to transfer to the good side. I think eventually, if we really have to clean this up, it will have to be a multi-pronged approach. The political will to clean up campaign financing, administrative reforms to make sure that the transfer pricing doesn't happen, simplification of rules to reduce choke points that fall under one person's discretion, and swift, certain punishment for those who are found guilty. Until then, I do think episodes like this will continue to resurface, but the only way from here is up. Thanks for watching. I just did this random research and figured that it would help to share it with anybody else that might be interested. Subscribe for future episodes. I have a bunch of videos coming up. I've really been enjoying making YouTube videos of late, and I also have a podcast that I do on the side. So if you watch till here, I do think there is no reason for you to not subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next one or in one of my podcast episodes. Go well.